Maureen Galindo is a Democrat who ran for the House in Texas this year. But she's also said during the campaign she wants to turn the ICE detention center in her district into a prison for Zionists and ICE officers. I guess she thinks she's progressive? Because hating ICE, okay, check, and hating Jews, sure, that's progressive now. Crazy. It's just not a deal breaker anymore for running. Politics has always been a crazy game, but the people running weren't this crazy.
The midterm elections are approaching fast, and Bill Maher is once again sounding the warning alarm, much like he did before Democrats suffered major setbacks in 2024. Graham Plattner's apparent double standards provide Maher with the perfect case study of a party that constantly demands accountability from others while refusing to hold itself to the same standards. Maher's assessment was sharp, unforgiving, and impossible to dismiss. So, if you enjoy bold political commentary, be sure to hit subscribe and let's get started.
Finally, new rule, let's get real about Graham Plattner. If you've been sleeping on politics lately, well, who can blame you? But the big story is the Democrats can likely take back the Senate in November if they win Maine. But their local candidate official now up there is, after the primary this week, let's just say a guy who has a backstory that screams, don't ask. Now, I don't judge Graham Plattner because I'm just learning who he is. Problem is, so is he. What I do know is he served his country in the Marines in war, and you can never discount how big that is. But then there's the sexting while married, scary behavior, so say some of his exes, old posts about how he's a communist and all cops are bastards and black people don't tip.
Maher highlights this situation because he believes it reflects what the Democratic Party has gradually become. Looking back a few years, Democratic leaders were openly supporting the defund the police movement while downplaying concerns about public safety. More recently, figures such as Zoran Mamdani and AOC have promoted policies that critics view as heavily left-wing and rooted in socialist thinking. Then there's Bernie Sanders, who spent years advocating aggressive taxation on the wealthy. I won't reveal Maher's entire argument just yet, but if Graham Plattner truly embraces the same approach, Democrats may be risking far more than a handful of seats. They could even put Maine in jeopardy, despite it being considered a state that should lean blue. Stay tuned because Maher's explanation is worth hearing.
Here's a typical Plattner quote he said about the Iraq War. You can think it's dumb and also kind of not want to miss it. Oh, Graham, I feel the same way about so many things. The Oscars, Christmas, Taylor Swift's wedding, that little speech Nicole Kidman gives before the movie comes on where she looks insane. And then, of course, there's the Nazi tattoo on his chest. I mean, seriously, this guy's whole life is the movie The Hangover. He doesn't need a term in the Senate, he needs a gap year in Costa Rica.
That's exactly how I see it, and there's something almost ironic about the situation. These are the same policies and ideas that Democratic leaders embraced despite Maher repeatedly warning them about the potential consequences. Those warnings were ignored, and now the results are becoming increasingly visible. If Maine were a deeply blue state with no real political competition, Plattner might be able to rely solely on ideology and still win comfortably. But Maine has never been that kind of place. Its voters have a strong independent streak and often reward practical thinking over strict party loyalty. This is a state that has repeatedly elected Susan Collins and values pragmatism over partisanship. Bringing candidates with far-left messaging into a state like Maine isn't coalition building. It's a test of how much patience voters are willing to tolerate.
Yet, I would still urge the folks in Maine to vote for him. For two reasons. One, we need to restore balance in our government, and a Democratic Senate would help a lot with that. And two, get used to it. America is a country filled with a lot of broken, horribly educated, phone-addicted, sort of nutty people. And as long as we live in a representative democracy, we are always electing our reflection in the mirror.
In many ways, Plattner seems less like a reflection of average Americans and more like a reflection of the Democratic Party's current direction. He is a candidate supported and elevated by party leaders who believe he represents their vision for both the Senate and the party's future. However, I disagree with the argument that voters should support him simply because Democrats need a Senate majority to restore balance. That reasoning doesn't hold up. The country doesn't need elected officials chosen merely to create numerical balance in Washington. What voters need are candidates with thoughtful policies who genuinely represent the interests of their constituents. Substance should matter far more than political calculations.
Oh, there's going to be more bad tweets from candidates that haven't aged well, more bad tattoos. Did Plattner know the tattoo was a Nazi symbol when he got it? Maybe. But people today are so inundated with misinformation and internet bullshit, I wouldn't trust he knew what it stood for anyway. Everything people know now is from social media and shit posting and whatever some other idiot sends them, or whatever the Chinese are feeding them on TikTok.
Many people, particularly within Democratic circles, appear comfortable remaining inside ideological bubbles where opposing viewpoints are rarely encountered. They avoid perspectives that challenge their assumptions and often dismiss information that makes them uncomfortable. As a result, many become trapped inside echo chambers that constantly reinforce existing beliefs rather than testing them against reality. When people consume only media that confirms what they already think, they gradually lose the ability to critically evaluate alternative viewpoints. That kind of isolation doesn't just create misinformation, it can also foster a sense of arrogance. Eventually, it leaves people shocked when election results or real-world events fail to match the expectations created by their insulated environment.
Maureen Galindo is a Democrat who ran for the House in Texas this year. But she's also said during the campaign she wants to turn the ICE detention center in her district into a prison for Zionists and ICE officers. But she says, putting Zionist billionaires in prison does not mean putting all Jews in internment camps. So a moderate. I guess she thinks she's progressive? Because hating ICE, okay, check, and hating Jews, sure, that's progressive now. But concentration camps?
That behavior is typical of many Democratic politicians today. Figures such as Maureen Galindo often seem willing to rewrite history or say whatever is necessary to energize their political base, regardless of whether the proposals make practical sense. Consider the suggestion of turning ICE detention facilities into prisons. How does that solve any meaningful immigration problem? It does nothing to improve border security, reduce processing delays, or address the existing backlog. It simply repackages the issue under a different label and presents it as progress. Too often, these politicians appear more interested in producing viral moments and catchy headlines than developing policies that can actually work. Maher recognizes the difference between genuine solutions and political theater, and he knows that symbolic gestures rarely deliver real results.
Easy. It's just not a deal breaker anymore for running. Politics has always been a crazy game, but the people running weren't this crazy.
Many people feel that politics wasn't always this chaotic. In their view, the shift began when the left moved further toward woke ideology and away from the political center. Some argue the process started during the Obama years through gradual changes in rhetoric and priorities. After his presidency ended, however, those trends accelerated dramatically. Today, ideas that once existed on the fringes of political discourse are increasingly finding their way into mainstream conversations. Even more concerning, some of the politicians promoting these ideas are actively seeking high office while relying on outrage and ideological activism rather than practical solutions. Maher's warning is straightforward. Unless the left reconnects with classical liberal principles built around open debate and common sense, winning highly competitive elections will remain a difficult challenge.
Well, I've spent a good part of my life trying to get straight answers out of politicians. And I gotta tell you, while they're in office, you kind of have to trick them. This statement from the administration: the president had the constitutional authority to direct the use of military force because he could reasonably determine that such use of force was in the national interest. That's too vague for you?
Totally vague.
Okay, because that's from Obama. And he's one of the good ones.
Bill Maher highlighted what he sees as a major double standard in Democratic politics through a clever exchange involving Adam Schiff. Maher read a statement aloud without identifying its author, and Schiff immediately assumed it was something Donald Trump had said, criticizing it harshly. The surprise came when Maher revealed that the quote actually belonged to Barack Obama. The moment demonstrated how strongly partisan assumptions can influence people's reactions to identical words. Maher's broader point was that many Democrats evaluate rhetoric differently depending on who delivers it. Statements made by political allies are often praised as thoughtful or reasonable, while similar remarks from Trump are portrayed as dangerous or unacceptable. According to Maher, that inconsistency reveals a deeper bias that prioritizes the speaker over the substance of the message.